And welcome back to episode 4, Stories from the River, the Jonathan Ishee series. If you haven't heard episodes 1, 2, or 3, you can go back and do that now. We'll still be here for episode 4, and then because you want to make sure you get the full history all the way to where we are with this one.
Welcome to Stories from the River, a show in which we go behind the scenes at Broad River Retail.
All right, so after this, I think Jackson had a 5-year plan. And so Jackson wanted to move out, and so we were going to acquire Jackson's stock or work out a deal to acquire most of his stock. His timing was pretty good. His timing has been pretty good all along, in as much as he was going to get bought out right before we didn't know how bad the Great Recession was going to be. And so the bubble burst, the Great Recession happened. I think overnight, our store sales got cut in half on a per unit basis from credit lines, from approval rates. And so it was all about surviving the Great Recession while we had taken on debt and pushed all of our chips back in, primarily you, and lengthening our runway. And then there was this thing called the Good Samaritan Fund. And so several stores all around us were closing in the middle of the night. And so to understand how that was happening, we kind of understood, well, their rent was too high. They signed leases that now they can afford to spend negative 5% on advertising, not 5% or what have you. And so we had to deliver into outer markets for Ashley's Good Samaritan Fund because they had taken customer deposits. And so this led us to delivering into the Columbia, South Carolina market and adopting, that's when I really remember the growth that added the stability to the company phrase really kind of becoming as prominent. And so that also became the creation of a new identity because we had 2 operating companies. We had Ishmore, which is what you and what you and Jackson called the first company.
Yeah.
Someone said, "What's your company name?" And you said, Ishmore?
Yeah, not the best name. I mean, try buying an airline ticket after 9/11 with Ishmore as your company name. You always got randomly selected through security.
Somehow.
So, yeah.
Well, the funny thing is that some companies still pay checks to Ishmore. We still get called Ishmore. Yeah. And then there was Hillsborough Retail Group, which was the South Carolina, Greenville, Spartanburg company in Anderson, which was an avenue that you guys were at in Vanderbilt. That company wasn't as successful in the P&Ls sometimes as the Ishmore Group, but the Great Recession happened and we had this chance to kind of acquire these new store leases. And so all that came about. And what's the story of Broad River Furniture as our new identity in late 2008?
Yeah, well, let's not gloss over the delivering to the outer markets and the Good Samaritan Fund, because I think that's if you talk about like a pivotal point in the company and how we survived, I think I would point to that as one of the top 2 or 3, and I was against it, and it was I was wanting to keep our head down and we can barely survive what's going on. Why would we do a favor for Ashley and deliver to Columbia? I don't get that. They're going to barely cover our cost. And you were persistent on, well, let's see if we can do this. I think we can do it. We've run all the numbers. We've looked at all the logistics of it. We can do this. We should do this. And so we did, at your behest. And we quickly saw that we could do this and that we knew what our costs were. And we knew exactly how we were gonna do it. And it allowed us to then go to Columbia and take advantage of the situation there where there's a store ready to go, but the doors are locked because they weren't paying the rent. And so I think it was, that was a real inflection point with the company with, your mindset around, we can do this, pushing me, who was more comfortable just trying to survive. And I think that's, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that and acknowledge that was a real changing point in our company. And that allowed us to grow into Columbia, to grow into Augusta, and to go ultimately, and we'll get to this, I'm sure, but ultimately into the, into the markets in Raleigh and Durham. And, but it was that kind of decision in a really hard time that allowed us to do that. And those are like when the chips are down, that's when you have to make the tough decisions. And so I'm, in hindsight, like really proud that we made that decision as a company. And I think that's what led to where you've taken it today. So that was a big moment that we can't and shouldn't gloss over.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to gloss over it, and I appreciate those kind words. I think I would go back to one of our core values, which is collaboration. And in that we say we make better decisions when we make them together.
Yep.
And so what I was only synthesizing at that time was what I'd learned from you, which was, hey, the number one inflexible cost we have is occupancy.
Yep.
And so I would say I wasn't having the same conversations with the bankers like SunTrust at that time. And probably the messages and inputs coming to you were, hey, this is getting nasty. It's going to be brutal for a long period of time. Hold on to what you got. And I think you probably internalized that as we got to go into survival mode, which is we did. Yeah. We did. I just took the learning of we've got an occupancy cost that's going to raise and increase because sales are going to come down, and we're going to cut costs and we're going to figure out how to get super lean. But there's not going to be much we can do to increase costs when they're going to slide faster than we can cut. And I just thought it was an opportunity to, if you looked at our portfolio of leases, to dollar cost average down our occupancy costs, which was a concept I learned from you. I had no concept of that prior. By getting new leases that wouldn't cannibalize the existing revenues, but we could share those expenses. And so I really thought we could just continue that stability that added to the growth, that added to the stability of the company, and give our people some confidence that we were going to stick around. And so we had some leases that would not, these leases, not all the leases signed from 04 to 07 were ones that you wanted to carry from 08 through 11 or 12. Right. And so I wasn't going to negotiate the leases. I knew you were. So it was 2 stores in Columbia. We took one of them. That helped keep the occupancy cost down. And if you recall, we did it on a percentage rent deal. It was our first percentage rent deal. And then we would eventually buy that store. And then the best lease we ever signed, I think, was Augusta, Georgia. And we went into a former Goodies and in their shopping center, which this may be a reminder to you, but you learned that the landlord, I think it was Kimco at the time, were going to break a covenant if they didn't get a tenant into the space, which then allowed us to take advantage of going into a brand new market. There's a little bit further delivery for us, but we figured out we could do it. So we used to say those Broad River Furniture guys were a lot smarter than the Ishmore guys or the Hillsborough Retail guys. And then we parlayed that into Hickory, North Carolina. Yeah. And then the big one would be into Raleigh, Durham eventually. So it did put us on a new growth path that help us stabilize and come through 09. And I think, but at the very same token, you had a lot on the line from, we took on a lot of debt when we took on Jackson, and when we bought him out. A lot for us was relative at the time. We had never done that before, and also pushed a lot of cash in to make that transaction happen. But sometimes the best deals are those that don't happen. Yeah. You may recall, there was a time that you and Jackson went and looked at the Virginia Beach market. What if we had gone there before the Great Recession hit? We probably would not have survived something like that. There was a time that corporate needed someone to go into the Chicago market. That's a big market far away from home. I thought at one point, Chris Dolsky or myself were going to have to move to Chicago, and that deal didn't materialize. And I think there were a couple other markets that didn't. And sometimes doors being shut are actually saving you from potential future mistakes, right? To grow organically. And so I think all things, maybe they happen for a reason and happen the way they were supposed to happen, or you just make the most of them as best you can and stay in the game. Try to stay in the game. That's one of the things we tried to do.
Thanks for listening to Stories from the River. To check out more episodes, visit storiesfromtheriver.com. Join us again next week, and remember to like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast.